Hey y'all. So what got me thinking about this is I decided to ask the AI. Had a little conversation about the Mandela Effect, and it was real funny about diagnosing me with all of my mental illnesses and all that stuff. And I was like, man, this AI is just the perfect defender of reality. it it is it is nailing it as far as the conversations that I've had with people in the past and trying to explain the evidence behind the Mandela effect. I mean, total. The AI, just like so many people, had its own cognitive dissonance where it could not accept the idea that reality could be fluid and changeable. And the way I look at it, when it comes down to whether it's multiple realities or one reality simulation, or reality simulation, I feel like it is multiple realities, but that they're all a simulation. So it's a hybrid belief that it's all the same. It's multiple realities, but they're all every one of them is a construct. So I'm trying to present my case to the AI because no point in talking to people, but I was curious if the AI might have a little more reason, and it all depends on which platform you use, because some AI will be very agreeable to anything you say, but this one was thankfully a little more like real people. It represented the population the way they normally would be. And I found it interesting to see the argument that it was giving me back, because it was just in complete denial of anything that I tried to show it or explain to it. And I realized that that's a common theme with when you're arguing when you're trying to explain it to people. The funny thing is they all adopt like the same defense, and it's just amazing to me that they can deny the evidence to this degree. So this picture here is an old and then I came across all this stuff back in 2016. There was these descriptions of the thinker. The thinker is a great one. I think the thinker is really a solid one. Um, it says the product description: the thinker sculpture by August Rodin is one of the most famous pieces of art in the last 200 years. And that's another reason why this simulation would probably mess with this one or promote it, is because it is so famous. It is easily Rodin's most celebrated piece. This is a fine copy of the thinking man in his framed haunch pose with his fist on his forehead. Many wonder if he is contemplating or grieving. Regardless, you need this replica if you admire Rodin's work. Yeah, I do. I need to find that replica and buy it. But of course, the replica, when you look at it, his fist is not on the forehead. It's under the chin, or it's that crazy thing that it is right now. It's not even really a fist. It's not at all the way this description is. And then you add to that, you've got the people with their poses. You've got the people, some people you see posing now that they're doing the pose in front of the statue, and they're doing it the way it actually is in this timeline. But there's still those old photographs of people doing it with their fist to the forehead. And then you've got people mocking, or not mocking, but trying to imitate the statue in like famous skits, like on Saturday Night Live and movies and all that. And they're doing the fist to the forehead. And that's everybody knows that's where it came from, was the thinker. Actually, everybody should know. So I tried to explain this to the AI, and the AI just said, well, all of these pictures could be photoshopped or manipulated. None of this is legit. So it just basically denied all of this stuff based on the assumption that it must be a fake. So just scratch it right off the list. And then I was thinking, well, there's no way to ever, to dig down deep enough and prove every single little piece of evidence is impossible. So we'll just take that argument right off the table. The thing I found interesting with the AI denial of reality is it was encouraging me to give an example. of something that has changed for me. And I saw this thinker pose change because I for one day I was in a reality where that thing was posing completely different than anybody has ever described to me. And he was actually, his palm was up and he was like holding his chin in the palm of his hand. It was very, I imitated it. I showed it to my wife. I was like, look at this picture. This makes no sense at all. And then the next day it turned into whatever this is here. So somehow I was in it. I was mixed up in like a reality that's a lesser known reality, an in between state, and then I ended up into this more accepted reality. I was reading a text, not a text, a post, and I I don't know what I did with it. If I can find it, I'll share it in a later one. But this guy was explaining his experience with the thinker, which is funny. And this is an old post. This goes back to like 2015 because I was looking at some of the old posts about Mandela Effect and what they were saying. And this guy was saying that for him the thinker had always been like it is right now with the hand of the chin type of thing. And then like he was looking at it and there was Mandela Effect people talking about it and it was the fist to the forehead. So he's looking at a fist to the forehead thinking that's not right. That's not the way I remember it. He was like he was in a different version of reality. Now he could be trolling, he could be making it up, he could be doing all that stuff. But I just thought it was interesting because what he was describing way back then in that old post, he was describing what we call a flip-flop. But his flip-flop was with the thinker, because for him the thinker pose was not supposed to be the fist to the forehead, and yet he's looking at the fist to the forehead. And then, he's talking about how it changed back to what it is now, and everybody's talking about the fist to the forehead being, the way it's supposed to be or how it used to be. So I thought it was a classic example of an early recognized Mandela Effect, or not Mandela Effect, flip-flop, and with something like the thinker, because I hadn't experienced this with the thinker. I have no dual memory of it being anything different than fist to the forehead. That's what it was my entire life. So this reality with this thing the way it's doing it now is completely foreign to me. Now, who knows if someday something happened and the universe got knocked around again and I woke up and it was back to being the fist to the forehead, I would say, well, flip-flop, big flip-flop here, and we'd be calling it out. But the I guess the point that I thought was interesting with this AI, let me see if I can grab that. The AI is saying, I understand that the existence of photographs and individuals posing in front of the thinker statue with their fist to the forehead may seem to contradict the statue's current pose. However, it's important to remember that photographs can be manipulated or staged, and it's difficult to know for certain the circumstances under which the photos were taken. It's also possible that these individuals posed in this way as a playful imitation or satire of the statue's famous pose without any intention of accurately representing the statue's current state. So that at the end there, that argument completely fell apart, made no sense. I think at that point I even said, just shut up. You're making no sense. It's just stupid. But I also thought about how, for a while there, the way it was talking sounded like so many discussions I've had with people that it made me wonder: who's the NPC here? Is it the AI that I'm talking to right now, or is it the people that answered just like the AI? Maybe they're just NPCs because they just sounded exactly the same as this thing. It just made me pause. I mean, one that comes to memory, and I wish I could find it, back in 2017, I want to say, I went back and forth with this guy who was a university professor out east. He was somewhat a big shot. I mean, I had contacted him because he had been talking about simulated universe theory, and he seemed to be pretty okay with that idea. So I thought, well, maybe he would listen to some reason about why the Mandela effect is evidence of that. But no, he was like total full NPC mode, exactly like this AI was. And I got to thinking, here's the problem, the real issue, and here's what I find incredulous, that people won't acknowledge this, is it's not just, and this is the way the argument always seems to go. The person who wants to defend reality will find one thing. Like they'll get you to give one example. Like, give me one example. They'll encourage you to do that. Then they take that one example and they shit all over it. Like all the things that is wrong about your idea, how you could be wrong, how things could be manipulated, how your memory can be faulty. It just goes into all that crap on that one situation. And they completely miss the point that we're not talking about one situation. And we're not even talking about just like it always wants to say like mass hysteria and group influence and all that stuff, but and it wants to discount anecdotal evidence. Now, if I had one or two stories of where I remembered it being, that might be something I could discount. But I don't. I've got like 1,000 or more, maybe thousands of daily experiences and impossible things happening. I can't discount that. The quantity is just too in my face, and the variety of things, the evidence. So at some point, the number of people reporting this, it moves. I don't know what the magic number is, but there's a move from anecdotal stories to data. And that's what we have. Just the sheer numbers of what we have people reporting has become data that should be used and examined and considered. The scientific community in general doesn't want to even stop to examine that. That's my real big issue with it, is that they won't stop and look at the raw numbers, which statistically there's a lot there. But they won't. And they missed a bit of an opportunity, because I think we really should have been having these surveys and done by no later than the first quarter of 2017. I mean, back then, I still was able to, and the earlier the better, but I was still able to go out and do random surveys with people. Just, you take the top 15 things that people recognized as Mandela effects, and you just show them pictures, and you just say, which is it, this one or this one, or you just describe it, this one or this one. And 80%, I would say 80% of the time, every single person, 80% of the time was remembering things the way I remembered it, but that's not how it is in this reality, which is a significant amount of people. And then there was some outliers which I would just discard completely. And Brian Staveley would say they're just pretending to not remember anything. Um, they're the ones who, or they're NPC. Maybe they're total NPCs, or they don't want to, like, they're trying to be tricky or funny. But every single question you'd ask them, they'd say, I don't have any memory either one way or the other. I came across those people, and they're either NPCs or they're just trying to be funny, but I would just throw them out. So Staveley's position is everybody's Mandela affected. Everybody remembers things differently. So it would be interesting to have gotten those numbers in large proportion. If some billionaire, some eccentric billionaire had actually funded this study, that would have been fascinating. But I feel pretty convinced the results of the study, I know what it would have been. You would have had 80% memory of the way things used to be with most people. Then you would have thrown out these ones who can't remember anything, or you would have just logged how many there are. And then you also would have gauged like the amount of intensity, like how many people were like kind of like wishy-washy, but they were still leaning towards the old memory, and how many were in complete shock and absolutely certain. Like I had people tell me, because I'd have them place a bet. Okay, money wise, how much money would you put on it that you're correct here? And they would like say, oh, I'd bet everything I've got. I know I'm right. I mean, so you'd gauge level of certainty in the survey too. And it's amazing how many people had this intense level of certainty. And then another thing I would gauge is come back to them within a day or maybe a week or some resting period, and see how many people were sticking to their original survey, or if they've changed their tune completely. Because a lot of people almost instantly receive some sort of an update or program, or cognitive dissonance and love for reality being consistent. Whatever kicked in, their eyes went into that hypnotized spin, and they just, boom, they started spewing out the current reality for whatever reason. And I said the survey wouldn't be as good to do now, because it's been the data sets just blurred and muddied. Too many people know about the Mandela effect now. It's like a murder trial where it's been heavily exposed, and it's hard to find an impartial witness anymore. It's difficult to find an impartial witness. Another thing too is where people might, and we've heard this, and this would be something else to track, is how many people claim to have dual memories. I think a lot of that comes from just the flip-flop nature of these reality shifts. I think we may have been doing some flip-flopping around for quite a bit, and people just locked in certain memories of certain times in the flip-flopping stage. I remember this one person had a channel called Chaldean's Cauldron, and they were posting like all of their Mandela effects just in a list. And first it was like 500, and then there was a list of 1,000, then there was a list of 1,500. And I noticed that in their list, some of the things that they were listing as changed were not that way at that time. So I was recognizing that they were writing these things down maybe when they were in a different reality, and it was so at first, somebody would could discount it or take away its credibility by saying, wait a minute, that's not correct. But what they may have been doing is listing it at the time, and that's what it was at the time, and that was their reality, and now it's just switched. But they had about 1,500 things listed, which I found interesting that they had documented it to that degree. I don't know if I can ever find that or if I have any old notes on that, but that was interesting to see. Flip-flops and dual memories would account for, the discrepancy, but there's still such a large number that it makes interesting data. And then just the testimonies, the anecdotal testimonies, the thousands, tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 people all sharing these memories of things, whether it be strong anchor memories to something that they absolutely knew, or a flip-flop that they observed. The flip-flops are huge, earth life-changing once you see it. The actual, the people who experience things in real time, there's a data set for that. Let's just say we had the data set. Let's just say some billionaire went ahead and launched this and had just all this data. And let's say the scientific community, I didn't know where this was going to go back in 2016. Like 10 years into the future, I didn't know if the world was going to be more accepting of the idea that the Mandela effect was real, or if it would fade into this, getting pushed to the back burner and not being talked about anymore. That's the latter seems to be what happened. But I thought, it would be interesting if the world and scientific community said, let's look at the data. There looks like there's a high probability that we are living in some sort of construct and blending of realities. That would be funny, and then what would they have done with it? They would have said, okay, let's form some sort of way to communicate with the people who are on the outside of this reality, or let's form a way to try and figure out what the purpose of this construct is. It'd be interesting to consider what kind of things reality and the scientists and all that would try to come up with, if such a thing would be allowed to be discussed without censored and controlled. But I don't, because I see the reality that we're in as a construct and a blend of possible timelines. None of this is a coincidence. None of this is. I do see manipulators on the outside of the reality and opposers, those opposing me from talking about it. All this stuff that we see, the fires in California, the storms across America, the UFOs and the drones, and all. It seems like we are almost on the verge within the next, I don't know, few years tops, where the disclosure just keeps coming out more and more. Yes, there's alien stuff flying around. I mean, the government's already come out and said, hey, this stuff is beyond our technology. There's no way. I mean, they've already done that years ago. I mean, it's like the soft disclosure keeps coming out over and over and over. And it's all connected. It's all connected to the simulation. It's all connected to this crazy mixing of timelines, and maybe even the unraveling of reality as we know it, the unraveling. And then you've got the defenders of reality trying to hold on to the old ways, and almost with a religious fervor. I mean, my awareness that all this is a construct has changed my approach somewhat, But I still, still go to work every day, still realize that my daily, you know, comfort and existence is still tied to this place, regardless of its, you know, regardless of whoever's pulling the strings. But I do like to make a note of it. So that brings up one of the things I said in the last video is that, and I've said this before, that interruptions tend to occur when I'm trying to do a video talk about Mandela Effect. It's like this unseen force wants to fight me and does not want me to talk about it, so it makes me want to talk about it more. That's just the rebellious nature. But the more it tries to suppress and get in the way, the more I want to say something, even though there's not much of an audience for me. I feel like I should. And in the last video, I was when I hit record, I thought, okay, it's been dead. I've been dead at work. I've been sitting at an empty building babysitting it during the storm, which wasn't much of a storm in my area, but still, I had to be here when nobody else was at work. And no emails, no phone calls, nothing was happening for like 2 days. And then I thought to myself, okay, it's dead. I'm going to go ahead and do a recording. But the way reality works, I already know there's going to be like some text or something that's going to get in the middle of my recording, and it's going to just ruin my doing it. So I went ahead and I put the phone on airplane mode for like 20 minutes so that it would just shut off any text or any stupid nonsense coming in to disrupt it. Because I already know what reality is going to do. It's always doing it. And it sure enough, 20 minutes I was like dead forever. And I said in that video, I've got nothing to do with the wildfires. I don't have any buildings there. I got nothing. So some big shot somewhere decided that all of our properties around the nation were supposed to look for like these rinky-dink residential air cleaners that you put in your room at your house or your office. We were supposed to dig them up in the building and overnight them out to California where we have properties. And I was getting calls from my boss, my boss's boss, other employees. They were calling. They were all trying to get a hold. Where's Scott? I'm doing my video for 20 minutes. I got the phone off for just 20 minutes, and the whole world's freaking out that they can't get a hold of me. And it was just perfect because I even made reference in that video about how I don't have anything to do with this fires. And I talk about how reality tries to just like do whatever it can to stop me from talking about this stuff. And it was, as soon as I turned the phone back on, I was like inundated and having to call a bunch of people for stupid reasons. I mean, why on earth we would be sending these rinky-dink used air filters out to California if the building has, I mean, just think about this. If the building cannot, if you as an employer cannot ensure that your employees are in a healthy environment, meaning that the air in this building could be unsafe to breathe, the employer takes on huge liability by forcing that employee to work in a building they don't consider clean air. They should be telling them to just stay home, to go fend for yourself, go do something, but we're not going to force you to be in this building on this day. And instead you're going to reinforce that you think that there's a problem with air quality by sending all of these stupid used residential style machines out there. I mean, class action suit is what I see, but anyway, it doesn't matter. It was. I saw this as completely dumb. They shouldn't have been forcing anybody to go into the office if they were concerned about the air quality, and they definitely shouldn't have been doing this because that just makes them look like they know that it's unhealthy and they're forcing people to come in. But whatever. I just thought it was funny that was the approach reality took to come at me for daring to talk about the Mandela Effect or anything. And it's all connected. I mean, all of this weirdness is somehow connected. The whole world. I don't know who or why they're pulling the strings on the outside, or if there's a agreement. Like there might be some conflict amongst themselves. We might be seeing fallout from that. But whatever the case, it's worth noting. And a lot of us already have noted. We don't have any huge push in the scientific community to really analyze and study it or take it seriously. There's a lot of pushback in that, but I'll keep talking about it. I'll keep talking about how reality is. is a construct, and yet there seems to be influences behind it that are manipulating it and against me from even talking about it for whatever reason. It's too coincidental for me to deny. Anyway, I'm going to end it on that. Thanks for listening. God bless.